What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Legitical Response. We cover political news. We keep you up to date and keep you informed with everything that the government does, because the government always does underhanded stuff that we don't like, and we need to be informed about that stuff. Like I said the other day, if you knew who your congressman really was, if you knew that they only vote in the interests of the lobby and they don't vote in the interests of you, the American people, right, then you would probably not vote for that congressman once again. And that's what I'm here to do, basically, is to let you know that your congressman, the people in the people's government, aren't actually looking after your own interests for the most part, right? Like I always say, there are a handful of congressmen and women that actually care about their constituents, that don't really care about the power that they have, that care about doing the right thing for the country and moving us forward and coming up with real solutions to solve the corrupt Washington problem that we're currently facing, the $1.7 trillion deficit spending, and the fact that your politicians only vote in the interests of some organization instead of the interests of you. It's all BS. We also love to counter the mainstream narrative machine, which is the corporate press, in case you didn't know that. They love to lie, and that's what I'm here for. We read out news articles, and we point out logical inconsistencies. And speaking of that, we're going to talk about some today that we haven't talked about in a little while. Big Fani Willis and her insane Trump deranged prosecution is just crazy, right? Like that whole episode with her disqualification hearing was just absolutely nuts, and I still can't believe that judge came to the conclusion that he came to keep her on the case but split up her and Nathan Wade, right? Like all the lying that she did on the stand, all the campaign fund stuff, right? Like she said she took campaign money but paid it back with cash. Like, can you prove this? But, the Georgia state legislature is investigating her right now for that, and I can't wait to see what they find. But she's under other investigations as well. Check this out. Fani Willis inconsistencies discovered by the Department of Justice. Oh, hang on. The Department of Justice discovered alleged inconsistencies in Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis's use of some federal grant money, according to a new report. Willis has risen to national prominence for leading the Georgia election interference investigation against former President Donald Trump. Her probe focused on his call to Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, in which he urged him to find enough votes to tilt the election in his favor, as well as the alleged plot to submit a false state of pro-Trump electors to the Electoral College. Now I will say something about that right quick, like the call, right? Like, so Trump here, get this, okay, in case you don't know about this. So Trump hears from some of his people that there's some funny business going on in Fulton County with these mail-in ballots and all this other stuff, right? So he's like, oh, some election fraud going on, right? So he calls up the governor of the state, because federal authorities don't have any authority over state elections, right? Federal elections, because the states handle their own elections. So he calls up the governor and says, look, there's some fraud going on up there. I need you to check this out and just look into it. And if you find this many votes, then you can stop right there, because that's all we need, right? So then in anticipation of that, he sets up a slate of electors, because that's what you have to do when you have an electoral college, put in a president of the United States. So he puts together a slate of electors in case this guy finds those 11,000 or whatever votes. So now he'll have electors to certify the election, right? And this is supposed to be election. He's tried to steal the election by doing this, right? It's all just BS. It's an excuse. They're using state laws to prosecute on a federal level, right? Like they're using racketeering laws, right? Like corruption, influence peddling, all that stuff, racketeering laws to prosecute Trump for some election business, right? Like, if you look at everything about this case, it's just nuts, right? Like, how could they come to that conclusion? right? Like, it blows my mind, right? Like, sure, you can look at it and be like, well, there's some funny business, but when you look at it as a whole, Trump hears there's some fraud, he goes to investigate, and all of a sudden, that's trying to overturn an election. What? Yeah, when you break it down like that, it makes no logical sense whatsoever, but that's what really is going on. But no, they want to try to put this like it was some sort of racket that Trump called the damn governor and said, look, there's fraud, find these votes, investigate this and find these fraudulent votes. He wasn't asking him to make up votes, which is what they're claiming he done. How can you just make up votes? How could a governor just make up votes? It doesn't make any logical sense. And that's why this whole case is just throwing me off, throwing me for a freaking loop, right? Like all the other indictments too. The only one I think has any sort of standing whatsoever to actually go to court, I don't think Trump's guilty for it, is the classified document stuff, right? Like, from what I've seen, they do have a legitimate case to argue on who could keep those documents, right? Like Trump supposedly claimed those to be personal documents, but there's an argument there, right? Like he had, in my opinion, every right to take those documents, right? But the way they went about it, raiding Mar-a-Lago, breaking into his house essentially, and taking those documents back by force, and then indicting him on espionage charges for those documents. Like, what? Espionage? Really? That's just outright BS. If they wanted to take him to court over who has legal rights to those documents, that I would be fine with that, right? Like, go ahead. If there's national secrets in there that we don't think Trump needs to have, then whatever. That's fine with me. But espionage? Really? Donald Trump? Espionage? The Make America Great Again guy? Yeah, espionage. Yeah, no, you can go suck on something for that. It's all just BS, in my opinion. I do understand that there is due process involved in all this, but it just blows my mind the lengths they are willing to go to try to take down Donald Trump, right? Like, the Presidential Records Act pretty much covers him on this one, if you ask me. But the espionage, they had to throw that in there because the Presidential Records Act should cover this. To be honest, at the same time, you have a clear-cut case of violating federal law by Joe Biden stealing documents and then sharing those with his ghostwriter because he wanted to write a book to enrich himself even more than he has already done at the cost of the United States taxpayer, at the cost of the Attorney General in Ukraine. Like, how is that involved, right? Like, yeah, he got the Attorney General in Ukraine fired. It shocks me that people still don't know that Joe Biden withheld congressionally approved loan guarantees to get a prosecutor fired in a foreign country to help his son, for God's sakes. And then they got enriched off of that deal. But let's keep going, though. Trump pled not guilty to all charges and has accused Willis of targeting him for political purposes. Since launching the Trump investigation, her conduct has faced heightened scrutiny from conservative critics, including congressional Republicans, who have raised questions about her use of federal funds. The Justice Department confirmed in a statement first reported by the Washington Free Beacon that some inconsistencies have been found in her use of those funds. During our review of the award to respond to this inquiry, we have noticed some inconsistencies in what Fulton County has reported to the federal subaward reporting system, and we are working with them to update their reporting accordingly. A Justice Department spokeswoman told the conservative publication. Specific details about what inconsistencies were found, what the specific grant was intended for, or what the funds may have been used for remain unconfirmed. Newsweek reached out to Willis's office and the DOJ for comment via email. Willis has previously sparred with Representative Jim Jordan, the Ohio Republican who chairs the House Judiciary Committee, over her office's use of grant funds. In February, Jordan and the House Judiciary Committee issued a subpoena to Willis's office requesting documents relating to her office's receipt and use of federal funds, threatening to hold her in contempt of Congress if she did not provide further documents by March 28th. In her own letter, Willis responded that her office has already provided you with substantial information about our programs that are funded via federal grants. Further, as I expressed to you in my letter dated February 23, 2024, this office is in the process of producing relevant documents to you on a rolling basis and is undertaking a good faith approach to provide you with responsive information about our federal grant funding, the letter added. Her office also wrote that Jordan's request of extensive documents demands is unreasonable and uncustomary and would require this government office to divert resources from our primary purpose of prosecuting crime. She added that Jordan's efforts will not derail Trump's election interference trial. That is a whole bunch of gobbledygook coming from somebody who is very underhanded. She testified in that trial. That was something else that came out during that trial of her disqualification trial, right? Like a whistleblower came out and alleged that that government grant was being used to buy quote-unquote swag, whatever that is, right? Like, I'm sure it's like shirts and chains and BS and just dumb stuff, right? Like laptops and iPads and all this other stuff was alleged. And this whistleblower got fired over that because she brought it to Fani Willis's attention that he is trying to purchase these things with this federal grant. She wrote up the paperwork to get the federal grant. She said, this is not what this grant is for, and this is what he's purchasing, right? That was all alleged. Don't know if we can prove it. That's what Jim Jordan wanted, and the stuff that she sent to Jim Jordan was woefully inadequate, right? She sent a bunch of irrelevant documents to Jim Jordan, according to Jim Jordan himself. That's the only reason the House Judiciary Committee was even involved in that, because that whistleblower came out and said, oh, this federal grant that was approved by Congress has to be approved by Congress because Congress is the power of the purse, right? They have to approve every single tax dollar that is spent. That's the only reason they were involved. So, it may be uncustomary, but that is the federal government's oversight rule. I'm sorry, not the federal government. That is Congress's oversight role as it plays into overseeing what the federal government does. Any grants that are wrote up by the executive branch have to be approved by Congress. So if those federal grants are misappropriated, then Congress has a right to know about that, and they have a right to investigate and get any information that they want to. That is, because Congress is the people's government. We pay tax dollars. We want to know what those tax dollars are going to, right? And we know from previous videos that our tax dollars, in fact, are going to pay for a bunch of dumb stuff.
$750,000, and it went to some, let's just call them eggheads, that's the nicest word I can think of, to study what did Armstrong say, what did Neil Armstrong say when he landed on the moon? Was it one small step for man, or was it one small step for a man? $750,000 was spent studying what he actually said. They listened to the crackly old audio from the black and white tapes. Nearly $1 million spent studying whether or not Japanese quail, if you give them cocaine, whether or not they're more sexually promiscuous. Your tax dollars. So anytime they're up here bragging about what they're doing and it's worth borrowing the money, you remind them what they're spending it on. Nearly $1 million to study Japanese quail to see if they're more sexually promiscuous when they take cocaine. Another earmark that we discovered in this bill is $1.5 million to encourage video gaming in New York. In fact, we might be better off spending $1.5 million to discourage kids from playing video games. Is $1 million for Martha's Vineyard Hospital, one of the richest zip codes in the United States. But the thing is, pay for your own hospital. I've got little tiny hospitals with 40 beds in a really rural community. But once again, why did it go to Martha's Vineyard? Because somebody's been here for 50 years, they're on the Appropriations Committee, they put an earmark and say, I want the pork to go to Martha's Vineyard. This bill is teeming with about $2 billion worth of earmarks at a time when we can't afford the additional debt. We're borrowing money at over $300 million per hour. $3 million per minute is being borrowed. We're borrowing money at $85,000 a second. This is just spinning literally out of control. If you look at the debt clock online, you can see the numbers, just spinning like crazy.
And I don't know about you guys, but I don't like our tax dollars, being spent in ways that just don't make any logical sense, right? I don't like when Congress does stuff like that. Like, how can these insane people approve $1.7 trillion deficit spending? It blows my freaking mind every single time that they do stuff like this. It makes you think, what are they thinking? Right? Even in, looking at the interests of the lobby, like, how could you vote in the detriment of the American people that badly? Right? Like, none of this has anything to do with the American people, right? Like, the stuff you just saw Rand Paul talk about has nothing to do with anything that should interest the American people whatsoever. But they spend money on this BS all the stinking time. But getting back to Fani Willis, I can't wait to see what the appeals court says about her disqualification. Yeah, because even though the judge ruled on that, he agreed to appeal that decision. Because to me, it seemed like he was just hands off of that one. He didn't want to rule in favor of the defense, in favor of Trump, essentially, because obviously he doesn't like Trump. And these people have Trump derangement syndrome.
If that man gets in, as soon as he takes the oath, he will have generals walk down the steps of the Capitol. He will take a hammer and break the glass where the Constitution is, and he will tear it up in our faces and say, now, I'm the king of the world. You will bow down, bitches. He will punish everybody that didn't vote for him.
Let me tell y'all how I know this shit.
I know it because I know what mental illness looks like. That mania is unstoppable. See, this motherfucker is Hitler.
But like I said, I can't wait to see what they say about this in the appeals. I really would love to see her disqualified because she needs to be disqualified. There was definite improprieties going on and a odor of mendacity, as the judge even put it. He even said that, yeah, that was very poor judgment on her part for doing what she did, but didn't disqualify her. Like, what the... Right, like, these people want to prosecute Trump so bad they will ignore obvious violations of code of ethics for these people, like blatant violations, right? Like, not only hiring of Nathan Wade when she was in a relationship, that's a violation of ethics code, and you could be disbarred for that. She actually campaigned against doing stuff like that, having sex with her own employees. Yeah, if you don't believe me, go look that video up. Just look it up. It's crazy. She did an interview with somebody. She was like, yeah, if you don't want a district attorney that'll have sex with your employees, with her employees, vote for me, type shit. It's like, what? Not only that, but then she gets into the campaign funding stuff that she took money out, right? And paid it back with cash. And there were several other things of just ethics violations that even just one of those can get you disbarred normally. But these people, like I said, they want to go after Trump so damn badly that they will overlook this stuff and rule against their own interests just to keep out Trump, because I promise you, he knew that if he disqualified her, you're not going to get another prosecutor in the state of Georgia to prosecute Trump. Fulton County was their only chance of prosecuting Trump. That's why that judge ruled in that way. I can promise you that. That's the only reason. And the only reason he allowed it, right, like supposedly allowed appeal, is because he knows that there was grave violations to ethics codes, and she should be disqualified. But he didn't want to pull the trigger on that. All because they want to go after Trump, and he doesn't want to be the person that ended the RICO case against Trump. That's all I got. But y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. What do y'all think is going to happen with this federal grant investigation into Fani Willis? Right? Like this, like I said, this alone could get her disqualified and could get her impeached, kicked out from being a prosecutor. Right? This alone. That's not to mention all the other stuff that we've talked about. But y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys. That's all I got for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching. And y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.